C1. You are listening at FameTV.info. On the dark sea, a small fishing boat was drifting along with the waves. There were no lights on the boat, but the sky was filled with stars and the moon. The scene on the sea was still clearly visible. There were two people sitting on the prow, a man and a woman. The man kept walking, standing up and sitting down, seeming restless. The woman was also very relaxed, sitting in place from beginning to end. She was even humming an unknown melody. The lyrics were vague, and it was hard to tell which language she was speaking. Lu Qinyan wouldn't have discovered it right. Halfway through his words, the man suddenly stopped. The shore was suddenly filled with noise and excitement. A few military vehicles quickly drove over along the pier and stopped neatly at the shore. A dozen people jumped out of the car, led by a man wearing a white suit with a red ribbon attached to his chest. The headlights hit the boat, and the man in the bow panicked. Soon after, someone pulled the engine of the speedboat that was docked at the side of the pier, leaving behind a huge wake. 5 speedboats quickly surrounded the boat. The fear on the man's face suddenly turned into despair. He fiercely turned towards the woman and said, "Let her. Since we can't live together, then let's die together." The woman raised her eyebrows. She still had a leisurely look on her face. "Sure," she said sweetly. The man looked at her flower-like smile and hardened his heart. He ruthlessly pulled the girl's wrist and dived head-first into the ice-cold sea. The people in the speedboat looked at the couple and reported to the person on the other side of the walkie-talkie. They jumped into the sea. "Oh." The man in the suit on the shore answered casually. Then, he said lightly, "The one who saved the girl, the man will go with him." "Yes." The team members quickly jumped into the sea. When they dragged the woman up, she had already poured a lot of water into her body. Her face was pale and her dress was stuck to her body. On the other side of the sea, the man that fell into the sea cried out, "Help!" a few more times, then fell down heavily without a sound. She was taken to the shore and laid down on the sand. She glanced at the place where the man had sunk, but there was no pain. "Su Xing, where do you think you're going to escape to?" The suited man and Lu Qinyan bent down. Under the moonlight, their handsome and cold faces seemed as though they were sculpted from jade. While their beauty was beautiful, it caused one's heart to turn cold. The woman's clothes were all wet, and her long hair stuck to her face. However, there wasn't the slightest trace of fear in her eyes. Instead, it was as if she had just finished a fun game, and was laughing happily. "What are you doing here instead of drinking with the guests, bridegroom? Does the sea breeze blow?" When the woman started laughing, her eyebrows and eyes were all curved. Her slightly upturned lips made her look like a cat that had succeeded in its evil scheme. Lu Qinyan's brows furrowed as he bent his knees to press her down. His knees had already squeezed between her legs. His hands caressed her chin, and then he suddenly tightened his grip. "You did that on purpose." Su Wen continued to smile, but he didn't show any expression of pain on his face. It was as if the pain was mixed into his smile, causing his face to shine brightly. "Qin Yan." She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him even lower, her bare legs already exposed from beneath the hem of his skirt. At this moment, she was circling around his waist like a water snake, her lips moving to his ear as she exhaled. "I'll tell you a secret." "No," she said. Not far away, a video camera's indicator light flashed like a ghost. That Su Wen looked down at her clothes. She wore a white dress with flat sandals, and her nails were trimmed very neatly. She had even specially washed her hair, letting it down softly and cleanly. Du Haichuan went over to her and took her hand. "Mom, this is my girlfriend." Su wrote a letter. The well-dressed woman cast a sidelong glance at Su Ming, then looked at her son. "I asked you to study abroad. It's learning, not dating. Even in love, you shouldn't be looking for a little girl like that." The white dress was so vulgar it made one's hair stand on end. Then there were the flat-soled sandals, which Mrs. Du almost suspected were old from the 80s. However, out of politeness, Mrs. Du still asked, "What does Miss Su's family do?" "Who else? Where are they?" Sue wrote back in a low voice, there is also my mother and sister. My sister is attending school in England, and my mother. Because of many years of illness, she spends half her time in the hospital and half her time at home. Mrs. Do frowned. Du Haichuan was afraid that his mother would say something that would hurt his heart, and quickly changed the topic. Does a guest come to our house? When I came back, there was a car outside. The license plate is not here. Well, your father's honored guest and his children are here. Miss Liu has just graduated from Yale this year. She is a year younger than you, and she is very handsome. There are very few girls in the north who are as smart as you, so you should get to know each other later. As she said this, Mrs. Du seemed to have forgotten about Sue's letter. Du Haichuan's face was a little embarrassed that Su-wen, on the other hand, acted as if he did not hear anything. He continued to stand there quietly, but his face was slightly flushed. Mrs. Du thought. This girl is really thick-skinned, how could a shameless man get on his own son? In Hangzhou, the Du family was considered a reputable family. Alright, let's hurry up and change. As for this Miss Sue, do you have any other lodgings? Should I ask the driver to take you there? Mrs. Do continued. It was clear that he did not intend to keep Sue's letter here. I'll stay at the hotel. Su Ming replied tactfully. Du Haichuan could no longer bear to listen anymore. He pulled Su Wen's hand and walked towards the living room in large strides. Letter, we will go and greet father first. Mrs. Du was anxious to stop her son, but she did not stop him for a moment. Du Haichuan had already pulled Sue's letter through the doorway and stopped at the entrance to the living room. On the sofa, Du Haichuan's father was playing Go with a middle-aged man in a military uniform. Du Haichuan's father was originally a chess player, and many people came to see him just to play a game. This esteemed guest was most likely here for the title of National Adept. Hearing footsteps, Father Du raised his head. When he saw his son, he was naturally happy. Haichuan, why did you come back? His son had been studying abroad for 2 years, and this was the first time he was going home. Dad! Du Haitian called out to him, his gaze sweeping towards the others. Besides the guest who was playing chess with his father, 2 other people were sitting on the sofa. A young man in casual clothes, a young girl of the right age, a man who was handsome, and a woman, Xiaoming. Come, greet your Uncle Liu. Du Haichuan had already stood up, and pulled his son's arm, and introduced him enthusiastically. This is Uncle Liu's son, Liu Qingyan. This is Uncle Liu's daughter, Liu Qingping. A year younger than you. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.